Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, those of you in the chat. So, it has been a bad day for GitHub and a good day for GitLab, as we can see here. Every GitHub repo right now, Microsoft giving him a right evil stare. So the news is that Microsoft has snapped up GitHub for $7.5 billion US dollars. Ouch. And there's been a lot of, let's say, disappointment, people jumping away from GitHub. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. So Microsoft has reached an agreement to buy GitHub, the source repository and collaboration platform, in a deal worth $7.5 billion US dollars. The all-stock deal is expected to close by the end of the year, subject to regulatory approval in the US and EU. So not necessarily a done deal just yet. So Microsoft says that it will retain GitHub's status as an open platform, being free for open source projects and agnostic towards programming languages as well as development tools. Yeah, right. What are they going to say? You must install .NET to start using it? Yeah, probably. So Microsoft and GitHub have been collaborating for some months already last year to announce that GitHub would support Microsoft's Git virtual file system. Yeah, so is it just an advancement from there? Maybe this was Microsoft's plan all along. So I'm going to switch my camera off. You don't need to see me all the time, do you? Must get used to this. I've been playing around with OBS. Let's change to this layout now. So yeah, GitLab have been a clear winner already. They've been mentioning about the new number of users, number of imported repositories, 5 times increase in customers today. And yeah, they're scaling our fleet to try and stay up. Fair play to them. Of course, GitLab aren't the only alternative to GitHub. There's a few others. Bitbucket seems to be mentioned well. SourceForge. Really? Okay. Tell you what, I'm not going to mention that. Perhaps I'll go and wash my mouth out for mentioning it at all. Yeah, there's a few other services as well. Nothing I'm too familiar with. Of course, GitHub itself on the server side was not open source. At least GitLab is. Perhaps that might be something to bear in mind on a decision if you want to move to a different Git repository, or Git hosting, I should say. Yeah. So, all very disappointing, but what do you think, chat? Happy with this, or really disappointed in the news? Yeah, I saw some mention there. John, are you a shill? Well, yeah, maybe we're all crybabies for talking about it. Perhaps we just don't like the idea of Microsoft taking over everything. I think that is part of my problem, really. There's only so many big, huge tech companies around, and why should the entire world of the internet be handed over to so few companies, really? Got likes of Microsoft, Facebook, Google, all very big companies, and why should we entrust everything to those few? Yeah, actually, I noticed that GitHub was loading very slowly. Spencer Kits. I did sign up earlier today, and it mentioned about the just confirming. Well, they send you a confirmation email, and I think that took the best part of 30 minutes to an hour or so to come through. So yeah, they're very slow today. It's quite obvious that a lot of people are investigating them as an alternative. Inkscape moved to GitHub too. Yeah, I saw Linux Lite were mentioning that they're moving away from GitHub. I don't know what I'm going to do for myself yet with NoTrack. It's not necessarily the code itself that's a problem, it's more that the download of the block list, that's all hosted on GitHub, and I don't necessarily have the ability to push the updates to people to look at an alternative download source. Yeah, that's kind of my problem at the moment, so otherwise I would just jump ship and move to something else. Good evening, Sneaky Linux. Yeah, so I'll investigate it more over time, but at this point I'm not rushing to get off GitHub, and I'm certainly not going to pay any money to Microsoft. Yeah, it's a good point to learn Linux. I'm just so utterly sick of Microsoft. Yeah. So I wanted to look back a little bit further as well and just see some of the news stories about GitHub. And I think some that I have remembered over time is that they've been quite abused badly on denial of services attacks or distributed denial of service attacks. And they've had quite a few benchmarks. In this case, this was the last news story that I read, 1.7 terabits per second after a recent landmark 1.3 terabits a second that hit GitHub. Yeah, and I think that was more associated with specific repositories they were hosting, and perhaps some people took a dislike to them. An earlier news story from 2016 reports indicate GitHub is having major issues regarding the company's future. I mean, it's answered the fact that they've stayed going for a couple more years since then, but what was I sort of looking at in this? GitHub brass wants more enterprise contracts which are lucrative. Others want GitHub to continue on its current trajectory and focus efforts on helping developers get what they need from the platform. And this is something you've got to bear in mind, that Microsoft are paying a lot of money for this. They're going to want a return on their investment. Or maybe they're not, as we'll kind of discuss later on in this video, that some of their acquisitions aren't necessarily doing particularly well and have had to be written off in terms of the funding. So yeah, they're having trouble on their future a couple of years ago. They've frustrated developers. I can't say I found it too much of an issue myself, but then again, I only really used GitHub. I didn't. Well, it's been a long time since I last did programming, so when I did programming again recently and was actually making use of open source collaboration tools. Before, when I did programming, it was more just I was a single developer. So yeah, I didn't have these sort of issues to deal with. And going back a couple more years, 2014, GitHub founder resigns after harassment accusation. But yeah, that's an isolated news story, but it's just something I was searching through and just thought I'd bring up about the topic. So yeah, the GitHub co-founder Tom Preston Werner and his wife Teresa came under fire in March when a former GitHub employee accused them of harassment, and it resulted in Tom leaving the company. So I was just looking at some more news stories, and yeah, so I mentioned GitHub was last valued at $2 billion in 2015. As of now, there is no information about the cost of the acquisition. Yeah, that was a few days ago, this story, so hard to believe they shot up to 7.5 billion in valuation in that time. After a few months, there will be blue screen of death for GitHub. Yeah. Blue screen of death for GitHub, as you get blue screen of deaths in Windows. What am I talking about? Blue screen of death in Windows. And this was a similar story after the register. We know already, but what was I thinking in this one? I Tell you what, I'm not used to these live streaming yet and trying to think ahead quick enough, but what was I thinking? Our readers wasted no time in getting stuck in. One comment said, Clippy says it looks like you're writing some source code. Would you like help with that? Oh, come on, that's going back to the old days of Microsoft Office. And they're talking about GitLab here, so yeah, as I mentioned that earlier in the story. And they do mention some of the alternatives as well. However, jumping ships to another service immediately is a little premature, and the words frying pan and fire spring to mind. While there are several other Git services available, and nothing stopping a coder rolling their own, it would be prudent to allow the dust to settle and plan considered migration if needed. Any migration is needed, yeah, that's fair advice. You can't just jump over to another platform and expect things to necessarily work all right. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to consider my options for the moment and then move as necessary. Let me just take a drink of non-beer, water this time. Yeah, very tempted to go for beer, but it's a work day tomorrow. So here's a list of acquisitions by Microsoft. Now let's have a look to see how many have become a success. It's actually quite a lot, really. Quite a few over time. Some we may know as being more recent, more memorable. Let's think. We got Skype. Where is that? Come on, here's the ability to read quickly, and I'm looking around the pop filter as well. So yeah, Skype Technologies, 8.5 billion. How well are they doing these days? Well, they seem to have wandered around on their own for a while before being enveloped more into Microsoft and being pushed. Well, what's that? More of a means of communicating around between businesses. I feel is its main use these days, and that's certainly more how I use it. I have to say the call quality is appalling. Quite often it sounds like someone has their head stuck in a fishbowl on the call. And then it has the cheek to ask you, how was the call quality at the end? Yeah, I don't think I could give a low enough number of stars. 0 or negatives. Yeah, anyway. That's awful. Yammer, a social networking tool. Yeah. And what about the other social networking tool that they had? LinkedIn, how are they doing these days? Memorable? Well, I suppose they weren't that memorable to start with. But I don't think they've really progressed forward. In fact, I've got another article more about LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn is down the drain. Absolutely. I did have a profile on LinkedIn for a while. In the end, I got fed up with all the recruiters emailing me on a daily basis. How would you like a job in London? How would you like a job in Scotland? No, I don't live near either of those places. Why would I? I got fed up with that. And in the end, I got a new job, and it was just a good reason to ditch my profile and get rid of this. Nokia. Oh, great, I've gone too far down the list. Nokia 2013. Anyway, let's just move on. So this was what became of Nokia. Microsoft finally admits Windows Phone is dead. Yeah, it cost a lot of people their jobs. Well, there's no real reason to boast and laugh about it when it's people's livelihoods on the line. No, it's just a sad demise to what was a very good phone manufacturer. And if all I remember about Nokia is the old Nokia 3210, was it 3310, then yeah, that's what I remember about it. I won't remember anything from their Windows Phone days. And was Microsoft's acquisition of LinkedIn a success? No, and this article from Forbes, and they mentioned about some of the other acquisitions. Yeah, Skype was acquired for 32 times their operating profit. Nokia was assimilated with innovation surpassed at the same time. When was the last time you saw anyone using a Nokia device? Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw anyone using a Nokia device. Anyway, so LinkedIn's development has stalled for several years, except some various other factors, but yeah, they're still growing, primarily due to external factors, and then they're pointing out the other problems with the platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, Google+. Yeah, I'd say Google+ certainly hasn't taken off, and the fact that LinkedIn was targeting more of a business audience, so it was away from those other platforms a bit. But we have to learn from history on how Microsoft will take care of their new acquisitions. And can we see GitHub going the same way? Probably quite likely. Anyway, that's about all I've got. Didn't want to do this as a huge live stream. I didn't want to go too long really on this one. Any more thoughts there, chat? And fair enough, Passing Elf. I'll see you all later. I'll see you later on that one if you don't want to stay around. It's not a problem. I just wanted to do this as a different format. We'll see how it goes. I'll try to live stream a couple of times. Yeah. So yeah, I do have a GitLab account. Bad TM, yeah. I've not done anything more than just signing up at this point. As I'll look into it, I'll see about getting NoTrack moved across. I think the other repository I've got on there is for the Ubuntu restricted extras without Flash, but that's no longer relevant these days, so I'll just abandon that. So that's no longer relevant nowadays, so yeah, get rid of it. Yeah. Oh, hi, switch to Linux. Yeah, you've popped on just as I'm finishing up the chat, or finishing up the live stream. I think Microsoft will integrate LinkedIn and GitHub. Hey, maybe. Not quite sure what the result of that will be. How can this conflict developers, and should we move to another Git service like GitHub? I suppose it's more on what you believe will happen, what you believe Microsoft will do, I suppose. As an immediate answer, I don't see anything much changing. I suppose a lot of developers are just concerned that they don't necessarily want to use something by Microsoft. If we all moved across to open source products, we wanted to get away from the proprietary world, we wanted to get away from things like Microsoft and to have them, I suppose you could say, invading our space. That isn't necessarily what people want. What do I think about Azure and Sphere OS? Azure, I suppose it's difficult because what I necessarily have on my usage of Azure is actually more on the security side rather than the actual cloud computing side. And for what I'm using it for, it seems quite useful, but I've got no opinion on the cloud computing side. Sorry, it's not something I really used. So I was just thinking there, if I have more. Yeah, something I was kind of going through my mind then with thoughts on security, and as much as it's painful to say that Windows 10 is actually doing fairly well in terms of security compared to some of the other operating systems. I know I'm going a bit off topic here, but Oh, by the way, I'm only talking about security. I'm not talking about ethics or anything with it. So yeah, the ethics of the operating system are appalling, but in terms of security, Microsoft have actually done a really good job in teaching their programmers good secure concepts of code. That's about the only thing I will praise them on. But don't sort of think that's me liking Microsoft. That's just a positive thing that I have to say about them. Oh, Manjaro on GitLab. Sorry, I've not looked at that any further. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there, chat. I have to say thanks for watching. I'll see you all later.